Long Island as a suspect now in custody for those Gilgo Beach murders. Rex Heuermann there in custody, and the search of his home and his office now extending down to South Carolina. I want to put up this tweet right here on Live Now from Fox. As the Chester County Sheriff's Office working with the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office and the FBI in the investigation into those Gilgo Beach murders. Of course, we're following that here on Live Now from Fox very, very closely. We want to bring in right now retired FBI special agent and CEO of security consulting firm Jupin International. Jack Jupin, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. And of course, this case gets a little bit wider and wider each day. Maybe what are investigators looking into, both at his home, his office, and now potentially a residence there in South Carolina?
Yeah, Andy, they have a treasure trove of evidence and more is to come, I feel. There are leads being covered by the FBI, by the police, basically around the country. We saw South Carolina being one of them. The other thing we're looking at now is I think there was a lead in Alabama, but they're looking at all the search evidence that has been located through not only his house, but also two storage facilities that we're looking at right now, and a treasure trove of evidence is there, and we're trying to, ascertain what kind of evidence is going to be helpful, which is, we don't need. But there's a lot of forensic evidence. There's a huge law enforcement team working with prosecutors on this, and hopefully we come to a successful conclusion, which will shut down the case.
Yeah, and we saw that phone records, call logs, and also DNA on a pizza crust kind of led to the arrest there. And now they're inside their home of Rex Heuermann, inside the property of him, inside the office. Maybe how much more information can they learn from this evidence, which they weren't really able to ascertain prior to this arrest?
Oh, plenty. They're going through all the phone records, all the computer records. I think you might have already reported that some of what they're finding is some of his Google searches and some of the information that he's looked at online, which could, obviously be circumstantial, but also lead him down the right path. Obviously, we have the DNA. Obviously, we're looking at phone records, but also you might want to look for things like trophies. Some serial killers are known to take something from the victim as a trophy to almost reenact and relive what they had done in this case. So that's another thing they're looking for. And obviously, we don't know what's in these storage facilities. Not many people own two separate storage facilities, but in this case, it's going to take a lot of time, as the DA is saying. And prosecutors are all saying that this is not nearly over, and it's going to be a while to go through all this evidence, and they won't leave a stone unturned either. So they're going to do a great job at this, and it sounds like a phenomenal law enforcement team that's been put together on this, working very closely with prosecutors.
Yeah, I do have to ask you about that because it's taking place there in Long Island, his home, not far from Gilgo Beach, where some of these victims, they were found. He is being charged with murder in 3 of those cases, potentially a suspect for more of those. Maybe just talk about the law enforcement overall, because this one is spanning up and down the East Coast as well. And I want to put up some just images there out of South Carolina. His potential residents were neighbors. His brother told Fox News Digital that he might try to retire down there. Maybe talk a little bit about the comprehensive effort from law enforcement in all parts of the country to try to piece together something so complicated as this and maybe so old as this.
Yeah, well, correct, Andy. I mean, you're going to have law enforcement from multiple jurisdictions. Obviously, that's where the FBI can come in and help out on this case, where they have liaison contacts throughout the United States with law enforcement and use us as a conduit to reach all these other states, all these other locations. We'll work with local law enforcement. We'll work with state authorities and other federal agencies as we need to go along. Obviously, the FBI laboratory is involved with this, looking at the forensics and assisting what we would call a police assistance investigation. But obviously, this is a major task force that's been put together. Obviously, we have over 10 individuals that are deceased, and we're trying to piece, together who's responsible for all of them, not just 3 of them.
Yeah, and now that we do have Rex Heuermann in custody, maybe how does that open the door for interviewing people in his circle, like his brother or such? Does that open the case a little bit more wide open and they can now question him? How does that work exactly?
Absolutely. I mean, this case has gone from covert investigation to overt investigation. The cat's out of the bag, so to speak, Andy. And law enforcement now will not only interview his entire family members, they're going to interview everybody on his block, everybody he's ever talked to. They'll call him phone records, and they'll go through every phone record, and they will talk to everybody he's ever called, his associates at work, people that may know him from the neighborhood. I know I've already seen a lot of articles about that there, people are coming forward and now saying, different comments about him, some helpful, some not helpful, but unfortunately, that's how these investigations go. There's a lot of work to be done, a lot of interviews, probably hundreds and hundreds of interviews are going to be done. And then you're going to need even more manpower for reviewing all the evidence. I see, taking evidence from the home, the 2 storage facilities, and, for all we know, the searches are not over yet. As you mentioned, South Carolina might have a spot to be looked at. And anywhere they're looking or even think that he might have been involved in, they're going to go and obtain search warrants for those locations.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of work in a lot of locations, especially over more than a decade of a time. And I do want to get back to something that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and people are talking about Rex Heuermann hiding in plain sight and potentially making a profile for something like this, for serial killers in general. Maybe is that actually something the FBI does, and just a person that works, that is from Long Island, works in Manhattan, does a profile kind of set up that way for this?
Yeah, I mean, each profile obviously is different, but the FBI does have a lot of experience profiling serial killers, unfortunately. In this case, he does fit a lot of the profiles. It usually is a white male in that age range. There are other particular things that the FBI looks for. I'm not going to give away all our bag of tricks, but the FBI profilers are very good at what they do. And I think they have a great handle on the case. And again, profiling is only a tool. It is not an end-all be-all, and profiling assists, but it's not the end-all be-all.
And I know you're not directly involved with this case. You may not know the answer to my next question, but certainly already charged with those 3 murders. Could this expand? Could there be more victims that is uncovered through evidence at several of these locations that could lead to more charges being filed against Heuermann later on?
Oh, 100%. The DA is handling this extremely well, and that's exactly how it has to be. They're only charging him at this point with the crimes that they feel they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Hence why I mentioned earlier that this investigation really has only begun. They have DNA evidence. They have phone records. They have some really good evidence that I've seen so far, but that's charged for 3 individuals. We have other individuals that are out there and other people that are missing that we want to make sure, we bring them and their families, justice in this case.
Yeah, that is the big case there. Jack Jupin, thank you so much for joining us here. Some great insight into this case. I know it was a potentially covert operation, now an overt operation there for police in multiple locations, multiple jurisdictions. Any parting words, anything you want to leave with our audience that I didn't ask you about this case or anything else in general?
I would just say give the police a lot of credit on this case, the cooperation between local, state, federal agencies. This is how it's supposed to work. This is how it worked on a lot of cases I worked when I was working international terrorism. But whether I was working terrorism or street crimes, it was always a cooperative effort of all law enforcement. And these individuals are putting thousands of hours. And there's, I would mention probably hundreds of investigators on this case. So, the public doesn't normally get a chance to see that behind the scenes information, but I can assure you there are hundreds of people putting thousands of hours in on this matter.
Certainly a very difficult job, a thankless job as well. Jack, thank you so much. Great insight. We appreciate your time here, as always, on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it as we continue on here on Live and Now from Fox. I want to put up just some more video here. As those Gilgo Beach murders, the suspect now in custody, Rex Heuermann there, and the investigation, though, continues on. The search for more evidence continues on. It started with call logs, DNA on a pizza crust, now leading to the arrest and potentially more charges to come. I'm Andy.